Welcome to Everyday Extension, the podcast that connects you to the resources, knowledge, and expertise of your local Extension office. I'm Justine Johns, your main host and livestock production agent with the Central Kansas Extension District, here to guide you through a variety of topics that impact our industry and communities. Here at CKD, we take pride in being a part of the larger K-State Research and Extension system, a network dedicated to serving the entire state of Kansas with research-based information and community-focused programming. From livestock and crops to horticulture, 4-H youth programs, family resource management, and community wellness, this podcast pretty much covers it all. In each episode, we'll bring you practical advice, expert interviews, and usable tips to help you tackle challenges and make informed decisions, whether you're in the field, in the garden, or around the family table. Thanks for tuning in, and welcome to Everyday Extension. Let's dive in. All right, everyone, welcome to the Everyday Extension podcast, where we're going to explore ideas, discuss relevant topics, and hopefully provide you with resources that help you either at home or in your operation thrive. I'm your host, Justine Johns, and we are officially official as of now with our first podcast episode ever. And personally, I can't find a better way to kick it off than to really dive into an important topic that touched the lives of many Kansans, and that is the role of K-State Research and Extension. So today I have asked Cade Rensink, who is the district director here at the Central Kansas District Office, to hop on with me and kind of break down what Extension is, how it operates, and the resources that it can offer you as a Kansan. So Cade, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And I really wanted to start with this episode because I am probably the number one culprit when it comes to not knowing what Extension is, because when I first saw this job listing, I actually didn't really know what Extension was and had to do kind of a full deep dive on what the organization is, what it can offer, how it works. And it's only become more apparent that not a lot of people really know what Extension is. And if they do, a lot of the times they relate it to 4-H, which is a huge part of Extension, but it's not all of Extension. So before we get into the Extension stuff, I want to start with having you give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are, where you're from, maybe how you got into Extension, and a little bit of insight into your role here as director and what you do within your area of community vitality programming.
Sure. Well, fortunately, I am a native of the Central Kansas District. I grew up in Ottawa County. My family's had a small farm and ranch operation on the western side of Ottawa County for several generations. And so the agricultural aspect has always been in my blood. You know, I can remember growing up, my dad would occasionally lean on our county agent at that time for questions and that. And so I always kind of knew a little bit about Extension, but kind of like you, I didn't know the full scope of it. But having grown up there around Minneapolis, going to high school, I graduated there and headed to K-State to study agriculture. Went into animal science. Actually, when I first started, I was kind of a dual major, I guess. I was doing ag econ and animal science, and thought that was going to best prepare me. But oftentimes you get pretty overwhelmed with coursework. And so pared that back just to animal science with a business option. Ultimately, thought I was going to be heading into the feedlot sector when I first headed down there. But it was interesting. You asked how I got exposed to Extension. It was actually a fraternity brother of mine had mentioned one day that he was looking at going into Extension. And like I said, I'd kind of heard the word for the name, but didn't know a lot about it. So I sat down and talked to him and said, well, what does that mean? And that actually really kind of sparked my interest in it. And so I met up with the Extension operations person at that time and sat down with her and said, well, how can I best prepare myself to get a job in Extension as an agent? And so she kind of helped me the last couple of years more focus my coursework and education towards that. And so when I got to the point of graduating, that was a point in history when the job market was pretty bleak. There was only a few job openings in Extension at that time. My first interview was actually out in Thomas County in Colby, and was runner-up for that position. But one of the things that happened from that interview was the regional director at that time, you know, she called and told me that night I didn't get the job, but she said, you need to keep applying because you're made for Extension. And so that's really stuck with me even to this day that this is the right career choice for me. So fast forward, I didn't end up getting a job in Extension right out of college. I went into private industry and was a ranch manager and seed plant manager in eastern Kansas, but always wanted to get into extension. So luckily, where my wife and I were living at that time, the ag agent job came open next door in Coffee County. So I applied for that and was fortunate enough to get it. And there I was a general ag agent. So I did pretty much everything we're going to talk about today and was really not a specialist in any one area. But I really enjoyed my time down there. Great set of people. It was a different part of Kansas that I really hadn't been to before, and couldn't have asked for a better place to start. About 7 years after I was down there, our old county agent up here retired, and he called me and said, "Hey, I'd really like for you to apply and try to get back up here." And so I did. And luckily, the board hired me as a livestock production agent. And so I came back to the Central Kansas District in 2009 and got settled in and enjoyed it, because that really allowed me to focus on where my true interests were, is in livestock and forages. And so that really suited me well. But as most people find out, life throws you curveballs. And I wasn't looking for a different job, but one day I got a call from a local bank, and they talked me into coming to work for them. So I did leave Extension for almost 7 years before I returned again. But I will tell you that separation and service suited me, or prepared me well. It made me a better agent coming back, because I learned a lot of the things that I didn't know, but it gave me a lot of skills and knowledge that helped me do some better things in extension in terms of programming. I guess coming back to the Central Kansas District, I served another couple of years as a livestock agent, and then opportunity came knocking again, and our district director at that time retired. And in 2020, I was fortunate to come into this director role. And believe you me, I was not laying awake at night wanting to be a director and a local unit administrator, but I just felt like it's something that I could provide a larger service to our district and to our staff. And so I haven't regretted it for a moment. It's been a wonderful experience, and we've got a tremendous staff that really are very, very talented, and it's been a real pleasure to work for them. So that's kind of my story. Along the way, I was able to go back to graduate school and get a master's degree in range science. And so again, related to the livestock world, that really helped out. And it's just been a fun ride. Extension's changed a lot over the years, even since I've been in, and we'll probably talk more about that. But yeah, that's kind of the background.
So when I entered in the Central Kansas District in 2020, Cade and I actually did a little rotation, because he was moving into the director role, and I actually slid in directly behind him and took his livestock production role here in the Central Kansas District. So it was kind of a fun time, and it was also 2020, spring of 2020, right in the middle of COVID. In the office here, I refer to myself as the COVID baby, because I started extension right in the middle of all of the virtual programming. And it was a different time to come in an extension, but one that I think taught agents a lot. So in the next episode, Cade, what I'm going to do is introduce all of the agents here at the Central Kansas District, and we're going to talk about each of their topics and their programming areas. And like I mentioned, mine is livestock production, but Cade really has a programming area, and we refer to it as community vitality. Cade, can you touch a little bit on what you do within that community vitality topic area?
Yeah, you bet. So community vitality is maybe a foreign term to some people. I think a lot of people think economic development or community development, one of those two. And community vitality is similar to both. I guess maybe it encompasses both, although it's probably not as heavy on the eco devo side. But community development in extension world is multifaceted. We probably spend the majority of our time in relation to educational programming, doing developmental type things, leadership development, board development. Most recently, we've really worked with organizations on doing strategic planning. Facilitation has gained a lot of traction and is a much needed resource for a lot of our communities. Obviously, through our job, we sit on committees and coalitions and that throughout the communities. But really, the focus of community vitality is just to provide resources or connect the communities with resources that they need to get some of the projects done. And a lot of that relates to quality of life type things. So, civic engagement, recreation, tourism, all those sorts of things. But like I said, the leadership development, the board development, the organizational development side, we can really offer a lot of those different things. And it may not be something that I can offer directly, but like much of our subject areas, we have state level specialists that we can call in for what I'd call maybe more specialized knowledge that they can offer. We've done grant writing workshops. And as I said before, a lot of the times it's not necessarily that we're delivering content relative to community vitality. What we are is we are a convener of people. So we've kind of, I guess, etched out our place in the world as being able to bring people together, help facilitate meetings to have community conversations or maybe difficult conversations of issues that are facing a community. And so that's really in a nutshell what community vitality means. But I would tell you beyond that, community vitality, if you ask somebody else, it's going to mean something totally different. My world or my operations of community vitality are fairly inclusive to not only the true community aspect of it, but also the business side. So working with small businesses and trying to connect them with resources they need. I'm not a small business expert. I could not tell you the first thing about owning or running a small business in downtown Minneapolis or Salina, but I know of people that can help people, business owners, do that. And then probably the other thing that folks overlook quite often in terms of community is our natural resources. And so I do spend a fair amount of time dealing with various natural resources. Probably most notably is water and landscape. So whether that's soil health, grassland preservation, forestry, I mean any of those things. And that's the exciting piece because that offers the opportunity for multidisciplinary work. And what I mean by that is, depending on the natural resource topic that we're challenging or that we're facing, we might be able to bring in horticulture people, agronomic people, or livestock people, or whatever the case might be. We can bring more people to the table in those issues. And so that's one that's always, again, going back to my past, has been an important piece of my extension work. And luckily, I've been able to hold on to that, but in a little bit different way. So
I know I can speak for the whole crew at Central Kansas District that we are very blessed to have Cade as a director and as a boss because he truly does care about us at the district and the community around him. So I want to dive right in, Cade, and get to kind of the meats and the guts of this episode. I know you mentioned you were talking to your fraternity brother, and that's when you found out about Extension, and you asked him, what is Extension? So I'm going to ask you that same question and turn it right back on you. What is Extension? If you're explaining it to somebody who has no idea and has just heard the word, and then maybe go into a little bit about how it's structured here in Kansas and what that organization looks like as a whole.
Well, Justine, if I was a good agent, I would have remembered the elevator speech that we were required to put together in new agent training. And I've been through that twice now, and I still can't remember it. I was actually on a new agent training orientation this morning, and that made me think of it, that I'm ill prepared for your podcast. But I guess in a nutshell, what Extension is in its fundamental form is we are the outreach arm of Kansas State University, meaning that when Extension was first brought to life way back when, the mission of Extension was to take the university to the people. That mission is still 100% the core of what we do. It's obviously being done in a much different way than it was 100 years ago, but that is still at its fundamental nucleus level what we do is we take the university to the people. So what does that look like? Well, we have all this great research, all this great academic work that's done at the university level. Millions of dollars goes into that work. And oftentimes, if it wasn't for Extension, nothing would come of it. I mean, the reports would go back to the funders and they would say, hey, great work. Thanks. Let's do another one. But a lot of those researchers are doing it for a larger reason. It's to benefit their citizenry. And so that's where we come in, is we take those findings and make that information accessible to the public at large in the form of publications, of fact sheets, of online digital content. We take that and we kind of water it down, so to speak, and we disseminate that out through public education programs, whether it be workshops, field days, meetings, trainings, you name it. We can pretty much do it in that traditional educational delivery method. Nowadays, you mentioned COVID. Since then, we've got a much bigger online presence with, just like what we're doing today, podcasting, video production, social media posts. There's just a bunch of platforms now that we can get that information out. The unique thing about Extension is that we are unbiased. So it means that we give out information without the hopes of any certain end result in terms of, like, if you were to compare it to a sales position, Sometimes those folks are selling a certain product with benefit for their company in mind. We're not in that business. In fact, I sometimes joke with people that we are some of the hardest salespeople out there because we're selling free information, and that's sometimes the hardest thing to sell because we do have so much information at our fingertips now through the internet and that, you can Google pretty much anything you want. And now with AI, it'll pretty much generate an answer for you, even if you can't find it yourself on the internet. The key to that, though, is making sure that it's trustworthy, credible information. And that's one thing that you can always depend on Extension for, is that we use sound data and scientific information to try and best answer people's questions and improve their quality of life. Again, that's been our mission for over 100 years now, and that's never going to change. We do that a lot of different ways, and each agent and each specialist that we have on staff throughout the state has their own special way of doing that. And some people are really good at a lot of different ways. Others really hang their hat on certain formats. But how do we get it out? You asked about how Kansas is structured. Every land grant state in the country has an extension system. They talk about a three-legged stool being teaching, research, and extension are the three legs of the land grant stool, so to speak. And so every state has an extension system. In fact, some states have more than one. If they've got, for instance, Native American universities or historically Black colleges that have extension systems. So it's all in all 50 states and even some of the territories. What makes Kansas unique is the fact that we have 105 counties in our state, and we have a presence in all 105 counties. Now, that's not to say that we're not changing our footprint a little bit. I think clear back to about the late 90s is when this idea of extension districts formed. What that looks like is two or more counties go together to form a unit. And sometimes we refer to those as units. It's the operational unit. We have some districts that are still at two. We have some districts that are up to like 5 counties. So they can vary in size. But historically, we were each individual county in the state. And we still have a lot of individual counties out there. I think the last count is we've got 21 districts, but we've got 67 units across the state total. And so that kind of gives you an idea of what we've got out there. We do have an office in every county. That's very important. In fact, there's only really one other university system out there in the country that's similar to us, and that's Cornell in New York in our makeup. There's Kentucky's another similar one, but us three, and I would say K-State in particular, is extremely unique in that fashion because we have that local presence, but we also have a very unique co-governance makeup, which we can get into if you'd like. But that's also what really sets us apart, and one that I think really maybe raises the bar because we have such a bottom-up organization because of that co-governance and that local board and those local advisory groups that help develop our programming. That really makes us unique. But a couple differences between counties and districts from a funding mechanism. Counties still fall under county government, and so they are an entity of X county, meaning that the commissioners have ultimate say over their funding and their taxpayer dollars that go to fund that program, versus a district actually has an elected board that decides what the funding will be through mill levies. And so they're set up very much like a school district or something like that, where they've got their own taxing authority. That's one side of it. The other side of it is that districts really offer the opportunity for more specialized knowledge. So as you mentioned earlier, in central Kansas, we've got 7 agents who each specialize in a different area. Namely, obviously you specialize in livestock production. We've got a gentleman that does agronomy or crop production, and that's his sole focus. We've got a horticulturist that works with both residential and commercial horticulture. We've got a family resource management agent that works in the areas of financial planning, retirement, Medicare, anything dealing with family dollars. We've got family and community wellness, who does all sorts of work from early childhood education to foods and nutrition to childhood literacy to you name it. She's all over the place. Then we've also got our flagship program you mentioned earlier is 4-H Youth Development. That person is all thing kids. They work with the actual 4-H Youth Development program, but they're also our foot in the door for other youth development organizations, whether it be scouting, FFA, church groups, just anything related to youth development. That's where that person really thrives. So we are very fortunate. We don't have the largest staff in the state, but we've got a very specialized and very knowledgeable staff who I feel 100% confident that we always rank in the very upper end of our system as a state in terms of programming and innovation and just having that street smarts, if you will, and being able to assist our clientele. We've got a really great staff.
So you kind of touched on our agent positions here and the role that we play within the K-State research and extension system, but we also have specialists that we work closely with. Can you lay the land for the relationship between an agent and a specialist and what role the specialist plays in the extension organization?
Yeah. So I guess I'll say first, you kind of have to understand the academic hierarchy, if you will. The agents, we're the field staff. We're out there in every county, as I mentioned, and we're the ones kind of the boots on the ground. We're working with the producers on a daily basis. We're keeping our ear to the ground on what issues they're facing, whether it be in the field, in the household, in the garden, wherever it might be. And so we're kind of the front line, I guess, if you want to call it that, to K-State, and they train us up as good as they can with keeping us abreast of what's going on from year to year, depending on what's happening. But we're really the soldiers, I guess we'll call it that we're out there on the front lines and working with the citizenry of the state. And that's our district. That's every unit across the state is made up that way. Where the specialists come in, they're maybe at a little bit higher level. In many subject matter areas, that's a little bit higher level of education. So a lot of our specialists have PhDs and that type of thing, but a lot of them have master's degrees, but they're even more specialized than what our agents are. So we might have a irrigation specialist, for example, or a farm management specialist that's even within farm management only deals maybe with, say, land values or ag leases or something like that. So it's that hierarchy a little bit concept that agents are still, even though they're specialized, have to be somewhat generalists. But if we find ourselves in a really sticky situation that really warrants having some more expertise, we can call on certain specialists to come in and bring in their very specialized expertise. Some have teaching responsibilities on campus, so they're teaching classes and conveying information to the next generation. Most, if not all of them, also have a research component to it, so they're really actually diving into not only finding an answer from what's already been established, but also doing research based off the issues that we're giving them or feeding up the chain so that they can get even better answers and more localized results for our clientele, wherever that is. I will tell you, though, that over time, this probably isn't official or formal, but over time, as resources have dwindled some from a budget standpoint, I would argue that a lot of our agents statewide have somewhat taken on a specialist role. Some of that is because of that budget and not having as many specialist positions, but some of it has also been we've had some tremendously talented agents out there who just tend to get it or can do it. And so oftentimes they get called on just as much as some of our specialists do, even though they don't have that appointment. And the beauty of K-State is we have a pretty open door policy, and we're very willing to work with our neighbors and count cross unit lines and share that information, because I think at the end of the day we want to see the best happen out there. And so if it means going a couple counties over or whatever, we'll certainly do that. But like I said, that's not an official format, but I think anybody can recognize that there are a number of agents across the state who probably in realistic terms serve as a specialist. They may not have a PhD behind their name, but they're very good at what they do. And so I myself even find myself calling other agents before I do a specialist. And that's no knock to the specialists. It's just they're spread pretty thin. And if we can find a good answer somewhere else, we'll sure do it.
I think you kind of hit the nail on the head and make me remember that, even when somebody walks in my door and I don't know the answer, actually, a lot of the times I will turn to another agent, and we're supposed to be so generalized. So I'm supposed to know about cattle, horses, sheep, goats, pigs, but I don't know everything about all of those species. So I have somebody that I always call with my sheep questions. I have somebody that I always call with my horse questions. Even if I'm pretty sure about the answer, I always like to call them and double check and make sure that I'm providing that producer with the best resource and the best information that I possibly can. So that was a great point to add in there.
I would also add, years ago, giving a little history lesson here, when Extension first started, outside of the local doctor and maybe the local attorney, the county agent was oftentimes one of the most educated people in the county. And so back then, if you had a bachelor's degree from a university, a 4-year school, you were really kind of at the top of the pecking order in your community as far as education goes. It went without saying that folks turned to the county agent, whether it was the ag agent or what they called home economists at that time. Those were the resources. That's who you turn to for answers. Well, fast forward to today, a college degree is fairly commonplace now. And so we're no longer necessarily the highest or best educated people in our community, but I would still argue we're probably one of the better connected people in our communities, and that's really where Extension shines. And even if we don't know the answer, like you mentioned, we'll find it, and that may be a specialist, that might be an Extension person, not even from Kansas, depending on what the topic is. So yeah, I mean, Extensions change from that standpoint, but yeah, it goes back to just making sure we get the information people are needing.
So I want to kind of move on and get a little bit more specific because we're going to hear from all of the agents at Central Kansas District in the next episode. But can you lay the land for different types of programming or educational delivery for agents? So, what is a program versus one-on-one versus youth interactions? Give me a heads up so that they know going into the introduction episode next time.
Yeah. So again, it's funny you asked that because I just spent a couple hours this morning with a group of new agents doing an orientation. We talked about this. So educational methods have evolved as everything else. When Extension first started, we really relied on those publications, those written documents to hand out to our customers and clientele to help inform them. Extension's always been known for their public meetings. It may be just a one-off deal on one certain topic at that time, or sometimes we get a finger shaken at us because we do these giant programs that have, 6 different sessions and it's almost overload, drinking from a fire hose kind of deal. But that's still probably the bread and butter of Extension is our public engagement through organized meetings, whether it be inside or out. A lot of our programs are held indoors. It may not be at the courthouse meeting room. It may be in a school. It might be at a senior center. But those public meetings are still very important. One of the things, though, that I think people also value and recognize real quickly is those one-on-one consultations are probably equally as important and can also, in some cases, make more of an impact. Anytime you're working one-on-one with an individual, you are likely to have a deeper relationship with that person, and you really get to know their operation versus having them sitting with 30 or 40 other people in a meeting. You don't get to know the people quite as well. But fortunately for us, we've got agents on staff that you'll be talking with that some of them really excel at the one-on-one consultations, going out and doing crop diagnostics, or like you might be going out and riding through a herd with somebody to do body condition scoring, or Melissa might be doing a Medicare appointment. So there's a lot of that one-on-one interaction, and I think everybody probably enjoys that the most because of that just close interaction. But we've got some agents that really, really enjoy doing the programming, and that's really where they focus their energy. And those programs, like I said, can take on a lot of different looks. We've been really successful with the traditional classroom style. We've really done a lot of outside work with field days, with workshops, with trainings out in the pasture, whatever the case might be. And you kind of have to fit your various educational methods with the audiences that you're targeting and what the content is. Oftentimes those experiential learning opportunities really drive the message home or the topic home. And I would say the other 2 components that I think all agents, regardless of subject matter, have in their job description is youth development. Most of our agents across the state, whether they're in a district or an individual county, have the opportunity to interact with youth at some level. It might be just the county fair, but others, like a couple on our staff, they work with school-aged youth throughout the year, whether it's summer schools, awareness days, doing after-school programs, what have you. If you've got a subject matter area, there's a good chance that you'll be able to work with youth on that subject matter area. Granted, it may be very, very basic or fundamental depending on their age, but if you're working with a kindergartner versus a senior in high school, you're going to shift your content a little bit. But everybody has the opportunity to work with youth, and I think for our district, each one of our agents really enjoy doing that. Does it make up a large percentage of their work? No, but I think everybody jumps at the opportunity to work with the kids because you can make a pretty big impact. And in fact, you can, depending on how solid you are with your presentation, you can spark a career interest, so you can shape somebody for life. The other area I would say all of our agents do a really good job with is that idea of community vitality. It's not real well defined outside of the community vitality program area like I have, but everybody's involved in their communities. Everybody works with groups outside of extension and gives their time either as a volunteer or an advisor. And so those are the other two areas, regardless of your subject matter specialty, that you can be involved with and carry out education.
In extension, we have so much resources and we have so much information. How do people access these resources? Like, what are the ways that they can get this information? Do they have to be a part of a specific program? Is it just available to the general public? Does it cost? Is it free? Kind of explain that a little bit.
All the above. So I would say that the two main ways that folks connect with us nowadays, because we serve such a wide array of people in terms of ages and everything, we still are just a phone call away or just a drive to the office. And we have a lot of walk-in traffic. We have a lot of phone calls. We even get a lot of emails with questions. But for those that have been around for a long time and are very familiar with extension, that's still probably their main way to get a hold of us, is either go right to the office in whatever county they live in or pick up the phone and call. Oftentimes, people will find the extension office by mistake or by accident because they were just told by a friend, well, just call up Justine. She can help you. And what oftentimes happens is they're calling Justine because they were referred to her, but it's not a Justine question. So she can then forward them on. So we're kind of like the switchboard operator of days of old. Even we get calls sometimes of, hey, what's the phone number for the grocery store? We're happy to help. Probably the other big way nowadays is obviously just getting online. Kstate.edu will take you to the university site, and then you can go to our local website, and there's all sorts of links. But that's probably our two biggest ways of folks finding us. But our programming is available to everybody. And just because it might be a topic that's, say, on livestock production, that doesn't preclude anybody from attending it, even if they don't know anything about cows. They can come to Justine's meeting. Very seldom do we have a invite only type program. If we do, it's ultra specific and it's for an ultra specific purpose. But most of the time, we try to advertise to as many people as we can get it out to, and they're all more than welcome to come and join us and learn. So I'd say our programs, our resources, our tools, our knowledge, our skills is open to absolutely everybody, whether you pay taxes or not. If you reside in Salina, we are available to you. If you reside in Columbus, Kansas, they are available to you. We are here to serve Kansas as a whole. I would argue that we're here to serve the nation as a whole, because we do that quite often. We get calls from out of state all the time wondering about what's going on. And so that is a really cool thing about extension, is it is open for everybody. And I would challenge someone to find something that we couldn't help with. We may not have the technical expertise ourselves, but like I said earlier, we can probably find something for someone somewhere. And that's just a really powerful thing to know that you can do.
I remember when I first started, somebody referred to us as the county Google, because if we don't know the answer, we can find somebody who does. So I always kept that in the back of my mind, because I'll get questions that are totally on different ends of the earth from each other in one day within the hour. So we really are here as a resource for anything and everything. You mentioned about how agents are involved in their community and serve their community in a whole bunch of different ways. But is there a way that our community can be involved with extension or be engaged with extension on their part?
Absolutely. Various ways. The first one that comes to mind is our group of extension, our system is built on volunteers. We are always willing to take on a helping hand to help us do XYZ project. It might be the county fair, it might be a field day, it might be a youth workshop of some kind. If folks have an expertise or some sort of interest in an area and they're willing to give some of their time, we're more than willing to take it. That's the preeminent way that communities can be involved with us, is through volunteering or providing resources. Oftentimes we lean on other organizations for partnerships doing programming, with offering different things that we do. Obviously, there's always the opportunity even to be involved with have the business world involved with us as sponsors or experts in their field that they can contribute to our programs. And we do oftentimes provide or offer business people to come be a part of our program, or we ask them to do that because they have the daily workings of that topic. And so we can lean on them that way. One of the things that the community can help us with once we've got some sort of relationship going is be a cheerleader for us, be our advocates, be our referrals. You mentioned that we've kind of been known as the county Google. Unfortunately, we've also had the stigma of being the best kept secret, and that's unfortunate that we've been that, because we've been around for so long and we've done such good work that it's kind of still a secret. But it is, as generations turn over and folks their careers and their lives change, they sometimes disconnect with some of the resources in their community, and we've been one of those resources over time. But I would argue we're kind of storming back, so to speak, and trying to make a name for ourselves again. And again, it's through that community involvement, and it's very much a two-way street. We love to be involved in our community, but we love for our community to be involved with us, and there's ample opportunities to do that. And I mentioned earlier, those partnerships are invaluable. So we're built on volunteers, but we can't do what we do without partnerships either. And I think about a program that maybe Lisa will talk about. It's called Simply Produce, where we partner not only with a grocery store, but also a church. So it's a really dynamic relationship there. But those are the types of things that we have to capitalize on in order to do good work. And it's really fun to do those. So there's lots of ways to be involved.
Very, very well said. And I do plan to have Lisa on for episode 3 to talk about her Simply Produce program. And so if you're interested in that, go ahead and tune in for that episode. I'm going to kind of wrap things up, and I want Cade to leave you with one key message that he wants every Kansan to know about Extension.
So I would say that obviously Kansas State University is here to serve Kansas. We are what they say, the university for Kansans. And I truly believe that, because we're a land grant university. And I talked about that three-legged stool. And, as taxpayers, you already contribute to our operations, and we're extremely grateful for that. We want you to have some return on investment on that. And just know that, as Justine and I have talked here today, that we really do. I believe that we have something for everybody. Whatever your bailiwick is, or whatever question it is that you have, we will definitely try to find the answer or the resources and connect you with what it is that you need out there to get done what you need to get done. Extension is evolving, and we are constantly trying to stay on the front end of things in terms of community issues, hot topics, and we try very hard to be progressive versus reactive. And there's never a time when education is not important, and hopefully we can foster an idea of being lifelong learners, and hopefully people want to continue to learn and look to us to do that learning.
Thank you, Cade. That was a great way to end this. That is it for today on the Everyday Extension podcast. Thanks, Cade, for joining us today and sharing all of this valuable information and really giving us the ins and outs of Extension. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in and being a part of the conversation. If you found this episode helpful, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend. If you have any questions or would like to connect with us or any of our agents, or just learn more about Extension, you can reach out to either of our offices. You can contact Minneapolis office at 785-392-2147, or the Salina office at 785-309-5850. You can also visit our website, centralkansas.k-state.edu. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and we'll catch you on the next episode.